The fog rolled thick across the Carpathian mountain pass that morning, making everything look like a dream. Jake Morrison sat in the passenger seat of the lead vehicle, his rifle resting across his lap. He had been working as a security contractor for 3 years now, ever since leaving the Marines. The pay was good, and the work kept him busy enough not to think too much about the past. His team was escorting a group of scientists who were studying some kind of geological event in the mountains. Strange readings, they said. Unusual magnetic fields. Jake didn't understand most of it, and he didn't need to. His job was simple: keep the scientists safe and get them home in one piece. The convoy stopped near a rocky outcrop where the scientists wanted to take measurements. Jake stepped out of the vehicle and stretched his legs. The air felt wrong somehow. Too still. Even the birds had stopped singing. "Hey Jake, you feel that?" asked Chris, one of his team members. Chris was younger, fresh out of the army, still eager and full of energy. Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah, stay sharp. Something's off." The scientists were setting up their equipment when the ground started to shake. At first, Jake thought it was an earthquake. But earthquakes didn't make the air shimmer like heat waves. Earthquakes didn't tear reality itself apart. A crack appeared in the air itself, glowing with sick green light. It split open like a wound, and things started pouring through. Jake's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. They looked like wolves, but wrong. Too big. Their hides were black as midnight, and their eyes burned red like coals. Smoke leaked from their mouths with every breath. "Get the scientists to the vehicles," Jake shouted, raising his rifle. "Move, move, move." The creatures were fast. They spread out across the mountain pass, cutting off escape routes. Jake opened fire, his bullets finding their marks. The creatures howled in pain, but they didn't go down easy. It took multiple shots to drop just one of them. Chris was shooting too, backing toward the vehicles. The scientists were screaming, running in panic. 2 of the security team were already down, torn apart by the monsters. Jake's training kicked in, pushing down the fear, focusing only on the next shot, the next threat, the next second of staying alive. That's when he saw it. Near a cluster of rocks, something small was huddled on the ground. At first, Jake thought it might be a wounded animal, but as he got closer, he realized it was something else entirely. The creature was the size of a large cat, covered in scales that shimmered blue and silver in the strange light. It had wings, torn and bleeding, folded against its body, and its eyes, those eyes, were far too intelligent, far too aware to belong to any animal Jake had ever seen. 3 of the wolf creatures were circling it, moving in for the kill. The small-scaled creature tried to stand, tried to defend itself, but it was too injured. It let out a sound that was part hiss, part cry of pain. Jake's radio crackled. "Morrison, fall back. We're leaving now." He looked back at the convoy. The vehicles were already moving, his team laying down covering fire as they retreated. It was the smart call, the tactical call, the call that would keep him alive. Then he looked at the small creature again. It was looking right at him. In those eyes, Jake saw something he recognized. Fear, pain, but also a desperate hope, a plea for help that didn't need words. Every tactical bone in Jake's body screamed at him to run. But something deeper, something that had made him join the Marines in the first place, made him move forward instead. He stepped between the creature and the wolf monsters, his rifle coming up. "Come on then," he muttered, and started firing. The first creature went down with 3 shots to the head. The second lunged at him, and Jake barely dodged, its claws raking across his shoulder. He spun and put half a magazine into its side. It collapsed, twitching. The third one was smarter. It circled around, waiting for an opening. Jake's rifle clicked empty. He dropped it and pulled his sidearm, a reliable 9mm that had saved his life more than once. The creature pounced. Jake fired, but the monster was too fast, too close. They went down together, in a tangle of limbs and claws. Jake felt pain explode across his chest as the creature's talons found flesh. He jammed his pistol under its jaw and emptied the magazine. The creature went limp on top of him. Jake pushed it off and tried to stand. His chest felt wet and warm. When he looked down, he could see his own blood pumping out through the tears in his tactical vest. Too much blood. Way too much. He stumbled and fell to his knees. The small-scaled creature was crawling toward him, dragging its injured wings. Up close, Jake could see its scales were actually quite beautiful, catching the light like precious gems. It made a sound, soft and mournful. "It's okay," Jake said, though he wasn't sure if the creature could understand him. His vision was getting dark around the edges. You're going to be okay." More of the wolf creatures were coming through the rift. Jake could hear them howling in the distance. He tried to reload his pistol, but his hands wouldn't work right. The small creature pressed against his side, and Jake felt warmth spreading from where they touched. Not physical warmth, but something else. Something that pushed back the cold that was creeping through his body. The creature's eyes met his again, and Jake saw gratitude there, understanding, and something that looked almost like sadness. "Take care of yourself, little guy," Jake whispered. The darkness was closing in now, and Jake didn't fight it. He'd made his choice. He'd seen someone who needed help, and he'd helped them. That was enough. That had to be enough. As consciousness faded, Jake thought he saw the creature's scales beginning to glow with inner light. He thought he heard a voice, ancient and powerful, speaking words he couldn't understand. But that might have been his imagination, his dying brain making sense of senselessness. Jake Morrison closed his eyes for what he thought was the last time. Jake, first thought, when consciousness returned, was that heaven had really good lighting. Everything around him glowed with soft, pulsing light that seemed to come from within the walls themselves. His second thought was that he shouldn't be thinking anything at all, because he was pretty sure he'd died. He opened his eyes fully, and immediately wished he hadn't. The room, or hall, or whatever it was, hurt to look at. Not because it was ugly, but because it was too beautiful, too perfect, too impossible. The walls were made of crystal that shifted colors as he watched, flowing from deep blue to violet to green. The ceiling arched high above, supported by pillars that looked like they'd been grown rather than built. "I've lost my mind," Jake said out loud. His voice sounded wrong, deeper and rougher than he remembered. "On the contrary, human, you have found something far more valuable than sanity." Jake sat up fast, too fast. His body moved with a speed and power that shocked him. He was on his feet in an instant, falling into a defensive stance before he even thought about it. 3 figures stood before him, and calling them people would be generous. They were massive, each one easily over 8 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in scales that gleamed like polished metal. One had scales of pure gold, another silver, and the third bronze. Their eyes glowed with inner fire, and when they moved, Jake could see the muscles rippling under their scaled hides. Wings, folded against their backs, marked them as something out of legend. Dragons. They were dragons, or at least they were more dragon than human. "What is this?" Jake demanded. "Where am I? What happened?" The golden-scaled one stepped forward. His face was angular and sharp, with eyes that burned like molten metal. "I am Drakon, guardian commander of the Crystal Hall. You are in the Dragon Kingdom, Jake Morrison, and you have been chosen." "Chosen for what?" Jake looked down at himself and froze. His hands were no longer his hands. They were covered in scales, deep crimson red like rubies. He touched his face, and felt scales there too. When he looked at his reflection in the crystal walls, he saw a stranger looking back. Still human-shaped, but covered in those red scales. His eyes had changed too, now glowing with a faint amber light. "What did you do to me?" The fear was creeping in now, pushing past the shock. The silver-scaled dragon moved closer. Her features were more delicate than Dracon's, almost feminine. "I am Solara. We did nothing to you, Jake Morrison. You did this to yourself when you sacrificed your life for Prince Kale." "Prince who?" "The dragon child you saved," said the bronze-scaled one, his voice rough like grinding stone. "I am Vorn. The child you protected with your life was Prince Kale, heir to the dragon throne. You died to save him. That action fulfilled an ancient prophecy and triggered your transformation." Jake's legs felt weak. He sat down hard on the crystal floor. "I don't understand. That little creature was a prince? Of what? Dragons are just myths, stories. This can't be real." "And yet here you are," Draken said, not unkindly. "The Dragon Kingdom exists parallel to your Earth, separated by barriers that sometimes grow thin. Prince Kale was traveling near one such barrier when he was attacked by shadow beasts, the same creatures that killed you. But I'm not dead." "You were," Solara confirmed. "Very much so. But when you gave your life for royal blood without hesitation, without knowing what you protected, without any thought of reward, you awakened something ancient, a bond between humans and dragons that has not existed for 10,000 years. You are reborn, Jake Morrison, reborn as a guardian of the realm." Jake stood again, pacing across the crystal floor. His new body felt strange, but also right somehow. He could feel power humming through his veins, energy that crackled and sparked with every movement. His senses were overwhelming. He could hear conversations happening somewhere far away. He could smell minerals in the crystal walls. He could feel the air moving across his scales, like a physical touch. "Okay, let's say I believe you. Let's say this is real and not some dying hallucination. What happens now? How do I get home?" The three guardians exchanged glances. It was Vorn who finally spoke. "You cannot return to Earth. The transformation is permanent. Your human body died on that mountain. This is what you are now. One of us." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. No going home. No seeing his family. No returning to the life he'd known, even if that life had been lonely and purposeless. "My family," he said quietly. "They'll think I'm dead." "You are dead," Drakon said bluntly. "To them. To Earth. To your old life. That Jake Morrison is gone. This Jake Morrison is something new. Something better." "Better?" Anger flared hot in Jake's chest, and he saw flames flicker across his scaled hands. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to be a dragon, or a guardian, or whatever you're calling me. I just wanted to help someone who needed it." "And that is precisely why you were chosen," Solara said gently. "True sacrifice cannot be demanded or expected. It can only be given freely. The magic that transformed you recognized the purity of your action. You had nothing to gain and everything to lose, yet you acted anyway." Jake closed his eyes and tried to calm down. The flames on his hands sputtered and died. "So what now? I'm stuck here forever?" "You are home," Draken corrected. "This is your realm now, your purpose. The shadow horde that attacked Prince Kale grows stronger every day. They seek to invade Earth and consume both our worlds. We need warriors who can think like humans, but fight like dragons. We need you." "What if I refuse?" "Then you are free to leave the Crystal Hall and make your own way in our world," Vorn said. "But the power within you will not fade. You are a guardian now, whether you choose to serve or not. That is your nature, protecting others. You proved that when you died for a creature you did not even know." Jake walked to one of the tall windows. Outside he could see a city unlike anything on Earth. Buildings floated in the air, held aloft by some invisible force. Waterfalls ran upward instead of down, flowing into the sky. Creatures with wings soared between crystal towers, their scales catching the light of twin suns that hung in a purple sky. It was beautiful, it was terrifying, it was impossible. It was real. "The prince," Jake said finally. "Kale, is he okay?" Solara smiled, and it transformed her fierce features into something warm. "He is well. Healed completely. He asks about you often. Wants to meet the human who saved him." "I'm not human anymore." "No," Dracon agreed. "But you were human. That matters. That makes you unique among us. You understand both worlds, both peoples. You are a bridge, Jake Morrison. The question is, will you be a bridge that connects, or one that burns?" Jake thought about his old life, the loneliness, the constant feeling that he didn't quite fit anywhere, the endless searching for purpose that had led him from the Marines to contract work to that mountain pass. Then he thought about dying on that mountain, about the small creature's grateful eyes, about the choice he'd made without thinking. Maybe this was where he was always supposed to end up. "All right," he said quietly. "Teach me what I need to know." The training began at dawn, and Jake quickly learned that dragons did not believe in taking things slow. Dracon met him in the practice yard as the twin suns were just breaking over the horizon, painting the crystal city in shades of gold and red. "Your human military training gave you a foundation," Dracon said, circling Jake like a predator sizing up prey. "But now you must unlearn as much as you learn. You are no longer limited by human weakness. Your bones will not break easily. Your muscles can endure far more. Your reactions are 10 times faster than before." "Doesn't feel like it," Jake muttered. He'd been trying to throw a punch at the practice dummy for the last 10 minutes, but every time he swung, he either moved too slow because he was thinking too much, or too fast and lost his balance completely. "Because you are fighting yourself," Dracon said. He moved faster than Jake's eyes could follow, and suddenly the Guardian was behind him. "You think like a human. You must feel like a dragon. Stop planning your movements. Let your new body guide you." Easier said than done. Jake tried again, closing his eyes this time, just feeling the weight of his body, the power in his muscles. He threw a punch without thinking about it, and his fist connected with the practice dummy so hard it exploded into fragments. Jake stared at his hand in shock. Did I just do that? Yes, and that was holding back considerably. Dracon actually smiled. Again. This time, the stone pillar. The days blurred together after that. Dracon pushed Jake harder than any drill instructor back in the Marines ever had. They practiced combat from dawn until the midday heat made even the crystal stones hot to touch. Jake learned to use his claws, his tail, his natural armor. He learned to fight multiple opponents at once. He learned to use his environment, his speed, his new strength. But physical training was only part of it. In the afternoons, Solara took over, teaching Jake about the magic that now flowed through his veins. "Magic is not separate from you," she explained, as they sat in a meditation chamber carved from blue crystal. "It is part of you, like breathing. You simply must learn to direct it consciously." "I don't feel anything magical," Jake said. He'd been sitting in this chamber for 2 hours, trying to sense what Solara called his inner fire, and so far he'd felt nothing but bored. "You are trying too hard. Magic responds to will and emotion, not effort." Solara held up her hand and a small flame appeared in her palm, dancing and flickering. "When I create fire, I do not force it into existence. I simply desire it to be, and it is. Try again. Think of something that makes you angry." Jake thought about dying on that mountain, about never seeing his home again, about losing everything he'd known. Anger sparked in his chest, and suddenly his hands erupted in flames. He yelped and shook them, trying to put the fire out. "Good," Solara said calmly. "Now maintain control. The fire is yours. It cannot hurt you. Command it." It took 3 more weeks before Jake could create fire without nearly burning down the training room. Ice came easier, strangely enough. Lightning was the hardest, requiring a level of focus Jake struggled to maintain. But slowly, painfully, he learned. Vorn handled the mental training, which Jake found the most difficult of all. The Bronze Guardian specialized in mental defenses and magical resistance. He taught Jake how to shield his mind from intrusion, how to resist illusions and enchantments. "The Shadow Horde does not only attack with claws and teeth," Vorn explained. "They were in a dark chamber lit only by glowing moss. Their corrupted magic can twist your thoughts, turn your fears against you. You must build walls in your mind, stronger than any fortress." The training involved Vorn attacking Jake's mind over and over, showing him his worst fears and memories, until Jake learned to recognize the intrusion and push it out. It was exhausting in a way that physical training never was. But what surprised Jake most about the Dragon Kingdom wasn't the training, or the magic, or even the impossible floating cities. It was how much he was learning about the people themselves. Dragons, he discovered, were not the mindless beasts of Earth legends. They had families, friendships, art, music, and culture that stretched back thousands of years. They valued honor above all else, but also creativity and knowledge. The markets in the Crystal City sold everything, from weapons to paintings to books written in flowing script Jake couldn't read yet. The dragon children played games in the streets, chasing each other on small wings, while their parents watched with fond exasperation. Vendors hawked food that smelled amazing, even if Jake wasn't always sure what it was. Musicians played instruments that created sounds Jake had never heard before, haunting melodies that resonated in his bones. It was alive in a way Earth had never felt to him. It felt like home. But he still hadn't met Prince Kale. The young dragon remained in the palace, protected by layers of security. Jake caught glimpses of him sometimes, watching from high balconies, while Jake trained. The prince's scales were brilliant sapphire blue, and even from a distance, Jake could see the intelligence in those eyes. 3 months into his training, Jake was finally summoned to the throne room. The Dragon King was ancient and massive. His scales, black as midnight, shot through with veins of gold. His eyes burned with power that made Jake's new strength feel like a candle next to a forest fire. Queen Lyra sat beside him, her scales a deep emerald green, elegant and deadly. And between them on a smaller throne sat Prince Kale. Jake knelt without being told. It felt like the right thing to do. "Rise, Guardian Jake Morrison," the king's voice rumbled like thunder. "We have heard much about you. The human who became dragon, the warrior who gave his life for our son." Jake stood, keeping his eyes respectfully lowered. "I only did what anyone should have done, Your Majesty." "But they did not," Queen Lyra said softly. "Only you stayed. Only you sacrificed yourself. That is why you stand before us now, transformed and honored." Prince Kale stood and walked down the steps from the throne. Up close, Jake could see he was small for a dragon prince, probably the equivalent of a 10-year-old human child. But his eyes were old, wise beyond his years. "I wanted to thank you," Kale said, his voice clear and strong. "You didn't know me, didn't know what I was, yet you protected me anyway. Why?" Jake thought about his answer carefully. "Because you needed help. Because I could help. That's enough reason for me." The prince studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Drakon says you are learning quickly. that your human tactics combined with dragon strength make you formidable. I have good teachers. The shadow horde grows stronger, the king said, drawing Jake's attention back. They mass at our borders, led by Malachar the Fallen. Soon, they will attack in force, seeking to break through to Earth and consume both our worlds. We need every guardian we can get. Are you ready to fight, Jake Morrison? Jake thought about his training, about the power now flowing through his veins, about the people he'd come to know and respect in this impossible kingdom. He thought about Earth, still vulnerable to the monsters that had killed him once already. Yes, he said firmly. I'm ready. Good, the king said, because the war begins tomorrow. The alarm came at dawn, a deep horn blast that shook the crystal towers and sent every dragon scrambling for their positions. Jake was already awake, had been for hours, unable to sleep with the knowledge that battle was coming. He donned his armor, a lightweight suit of scales that had been crafted specifically for him, and grabbed his weapons. The Dragon Kingdom had given him swords forged from star metal, blades that hummed with power and never dulled. But Jake had also requested something from his old life. Draken had looked at him strangely when Jake described what he wanted, but the dragonsmiths had delivered. Jake now carried a modified rifle that fired crystallized magic instead of bullets, alongside his traditional weapons. Blending old and new? Silara asked as she met him on the battlements. Her silver scales were covered in battle armor that gleamed in the rising suns. Using every advantage I can get. He looked out over the wall and felt his heart sink. The shadow horde stretched to the horizon, a sea of darkness that seemed to swallow the light itself. Thousands upon thousands of the wolf-like beasts Jake remembered from the mountain pass. Corrupted dragons that had been twisted by dark magic, their scales now black and dripping with poison, and things Jake had no names for. Creatures that hurt to look at directly, that seemed to exist halfway between reality and nightmare. At the center of the horde floated a massive dragon, easily 3 times the size of the king. His scales were the color of dried blood, and his eyes burned with green hellfire. This had to be Malachar the Fallen. There are so many, Jake whispered. Yes, Dracon said from his other side. The Golden Guardian's face was grim. But we have held them before. We will hold them again. Remember your training, Jake Morrison. Stay with your unit. Do not try to be a hero. Jake nodded, but his stomach was churning. Training was one thing. Actual combat against an army of nightmares was something else entirely. The shadow horde attacked as the first sun cleared the horizon. They came as a wave of teeth and claws and dark magic, crashing against the crystal walls like a tsunami of death. The dragon defenders met them with fire and lightning, with blade and claw, with ancient magic that lit up the sky. Jake stood with the other guardians on the eastern battlements, firing his magic rifle into the approaching horde. Each shot punched through multiple enemies, but more just kept coming. When the first wave of shadow beasts reached the walls and started climbing, Jake switched to his swords and waded into close combat. His training took over. Block, parry, strike. Use the enemy's momentum against them. Watch your flanks. The movements were the same as his marine training, just faster, harder, more lethal. His blades sang through the air, cutting through shadow flesh like it was paper. But the enemy was relentless. For every beast Jake killed, 2 more took its place. He saw dragons falling from the sky, torn apart by corrupted kin. He saw guardians overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The crystal walls were holding, but barely. Then the real attack began. A section of the wall exploded inward as one of the massive corrupted dragons smashed through. It landed in the courtyard behind the defenses, roaring its triumph. Behind it, shadow beasts poured through the breach like water through a broken dam. "The palace!" someone screamed. "They're going for the royal family!" Jake's blood ran cold. Prince Kale was in that palace, the child who had given him this second life. He looked at Dracon, saw the Guardian Commander already moving to plug the breach. Jake made a decision. He ran. Behind him, Dracon shouted something, but Jake was already gone, sprinting across the crystal bridges toward the palace. His new body moved with speed that would have been impossible when he was human. He covered ground in leaps, his wings finally unfurling to carry him across gaps his legs couldn't jump. The palace grounds were chaos. Palace guards fought desperately against the shadow beasts, but they were being pushed back. Jake hit the enemy line like a meteor, his swords flashing, fire erupting from his hands. He carved a path through the beasts, heading for the main entrance. Inside the palace, the corridors were filled with smoke and screams. Jake followed the sounds of combat, his enhanced senses guiding him through the maze. He found the royal chambers on the 3rd level, where a dozen shadow beasts were trying to break through the reinforced doors. Jake didn't give them a chance to turn around. He unleashed everything Solara had taught him, lightning and ice and fire all at once, a storm of elemental fury that incinerated the beasts where they stood. He kicked through the smoldering remains and burst through the doors. Prince Kale was huddled in the corner with 2 palace guards, both wounded, but still standing between the prince and danger. The young dragon's eyes went wide when he saw Jake. "You came," Kale said, and there was wonder in his voice. "Of course I did," Jake said. He checked the guards. One had a broken wing, the other deep gashes across his chest. "Can you 2 move?" "We will not leave the prince," the wounded guard gasped. "Good, then we move together, now." They made it halfway down the corridor before running into a corrupted dragon. The thing had once been beautiful, but now its scales were black and oozing, its eyes mad with whatever dark magic controlled it. It saw them and roared, launching itself forward. Jake shoved Kale and the guards behind him and met the corrupted dragon head-on. They crashed together in a tangle of scales and claws, smashing through crystal walls. The corrupted dragon was strong, maybe stronger than Jake, but it was also mindless, driven only by rage and hunger. Jake used that. He led the beast on a chase through the palace, smashing through rooms and hallways, always staying just ahead of its snapping jaws. He waited until they reached the Great Hall, a massive open space with a high ceiling. Then he stopped and turned. The corrupted dragon lunged. Jake dodged and grabbed a chandelier, using it to swing himself up and onto the beast's back. He drove both swords deep into its spine, then channeled every bit of fire magic he could summon directly into the wounds. The corrupted dragon's scream shook the palace. It thrashed and spun, trying to throw Jake off. He pushed more fire, more power, burning the corruption from the inside out. Finally, with a last shuddering gasp, the beast collapsed. Jake rolled off its smoking corpse and stumbled. His armor was torn. Blood leaked from a dozen wounds he hadn't even felt during the fight. His magic was nearly exhausted, but he was alive. More importantly, so was Prince Kale. Jake made his way back to where he'd left the prince and guards. They were still there, defending a doorway against a handful of shadow beasts. Jake dispatched the creatures with the last of his strength, then slumped against a wall. "Is it over?" Kale asked quietly. Jake listened. The sounds of battle were fading. The horn was blowing again, but this time it was a different note. Victory, not alarm. "I think so," Jake said, "for now." They made their way outside to find the shadow horde in retreat. The crystal walls had held. The defenders had won. But the cost had been high. Bodies lay everywhere, dragon and beast alike. The beautiful crystal city was scarred and broken in places. Draken found Jake sitting on the palace steps, too exhausted to move. The Guardian Commander looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "I told you not to be a hero," said Drakon. "Couldn't help it," Jake said with a tired smile. "It's who I am." "Yes," Drakon agreed. "I suppose it is." Jake woke up 3 days later in the healing chambers, his body wrapped in bandages that glowed with soft blue light. Every muscle ached, and his head felt like someone had used it as a drum. But he was alive, which was more than he'd expected after the battle. Solara was sitting beside his bed, reading from a crystalline tablet. She looked up when Jake groaned and tried to sit up. "Stay down," she ordered. "You had 17 broken bones, internal bleeding, magical exhaustion, and nearly died twice during healing. The only reason you're alive is because you're apparently too stubborn to quit." "How bad was it?" Jake asked. His voice came out as a rasp. "We lost a quarter of our guardian force. The walls are damaged in 3 places. The palace will need months of repair." Solara set down her tablet, and her expression softened. "But we won. The Shadow Horde is broken and scattered. Malachar retreated back to his dark realm. You helped save the kingdom, Jake." "I just protected one kid," Jake said. "The heir to the throne. The future of our people." Solara smiled slightly. "That one kid matters quite a lot." Over the next few days, as Jake recovered, he received visitors. Draken came to tell him about the tactical analysis of the battle, how Jake's unconventional methods had actually disrupted several enemy formations. Vorn brought him books on dragon history, apparently deciding that Jake's education was falling behind. But the visitor Jake was most surprised by was Prince Kale himself. The young dragon came in the evening, when the twin suns were setting and painting the healing chamber in shades of purple and gold. He stood awkwardly by Jake's bed, his sapphire scales catching the light. "I am not supposed to be here," Kale admitted. "The guards do not know I left my chambers, but I needed to see you. Just need a few more days, and I'll be back on my feet." "You saved me twice now," Kale said quietly. "Once when you were human and knew nothing of our world. Once when you were dragon and had everything to lose. I do not understand why. The guards say it is your duty, but I think it is more than that." Jake thought about how to answer. He could give the easy response about duty and honor and all the things guardians were supposed to say. But Kale deserved better than easy answers. "When I was human, I spent a lot of time looking for something that mattered," Jake said slowly. "I joined the military to serve something bigger than myself. But I never really felt like I fit, like I'd found my place." He gestured around the healing chamber. "This is crazy, all of this. A few months ago, I didn't even believe dragons existed. But protecting you, protecting your people, it feels right in a way nothing ever did back home." "You miss Earth?" It wasn't a question. "Sometimes, I miss the small things. Coffee, baseball games, pizza." Jake smiled sadly. "But I don't miss the person I was there. I was just going through the motions, waiting for something to happen. Here, I have purpose." Kale was quiet for a moment. Then he did something that surprised Jake. The young dragon reached out with one clawed hand and touched Jake's scaled arm. Magic flowed from the contact, warm and bright and powerful. Jake gasped as he felt something change inside him. His crimson scales flashed gold for just a moment, and he felt a connection form, like a thread of light linking his heart to Kale's. "What did you just do?" Jake asked when he could speak again. "I marked you as my personal guardian," Kale said, his voice stronger now, more sure. "When I become king, you will stand at my right hand. But more than that, I name you as my battle brother, not by blood, but by bond. You have proven yourself worthy twice over." "Kale, I don't know what to say." "Say you will stay," the prince said simply. "Say you will help me protect our people when my time comes to rule. Say you will teach me to be brave like you." "I'm not brave," Jake protested. "I'm just someone who can't walk away when people need help." "That is what bravery is," Kale said wisely. "Acting even when you are afraid, even when the cost is high." He stepped back and bowed formally, an honor Jake knew dragons rarely gave. "Thank you," Guardian Jake Morrison, my brother. After Kale left, Jake lay in his bed and thought about everything that had happened. He died on a mountain pass, trying to save a creature he didn't know. He'd been reborn as something impossible. He'd learned to wield magic and fight monsters. He'd found a purpose and a people who needed him. The next morning, Jake was cleared to leave the healing chambers. He walked out into the Crystal City and was immediately struck by how different it looked. The damage from the battle was being repaired, but slowly. Dragons worked together to rebuild broken towers and mend shattered walls. But there was life everywhere. Children playing, markets reopening, music drifting from open windows. Sylara found him standing on a bridge, overlooking the city. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside him and looked out at the view. "Are you homesick?" she asked finally. Jake considered the question honestly. "A little. But this feels more like home than Earth ever did." "Why do you think that is?" "On Earth I was always searching for something, some meaning, some reason for existing." Jake gestured at the city. "Here I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. Protect, serve, fight for people who can't fight for themselves. It's simple." "Nothing about you is simple, Jake Morrison," Sylara said with a slight smile. "You are a bridge between two worlds, human enough to think in ways we cannot, dragon enough to fight beside us. That makes you unique. Is that good or bad? That depends on what you choose to do with it." Sylara turned to face him fully. "Malachar will return. The Shadow Horde is not defeated, merely scattered. This war is far from over. But you have proven yourself in battle. You have earned the prince's favor and the respect of the Guardian Force. You could choose to stay in the palace, advise the throne, live in comfort and safety. But," Jake could hear the unspoken word, "but I think you are a warrior, not an advisor. I think you will want to fight when the enemy comes again. I think you will want to protect the people you have come to care about." Silara's eyes were serious. "That path will be hard, dangerous. You may not survive the next battle, or the one after that. Is that what you want?" Jake thought about Prince Kale's grateful eyes, about the dragon children playing in the streets, about the markets and the music and the life that filled this impossible city. He thought about Draken's gruff approval and Vorn's patient teaching, about Silara's friendship and the bonds he'd formed. Most of all, he thought about dying on that mountain and the choice he'd made without hesitation, to protect someone who needed help, no matter the cost. "Yeah," Jake said quietly. "That's what I want. That's who I am." "Good," Sylara said, "because we need you, Jake Morrison. All of us." That evening, Jake stood on the palace balcony, watching the twin suns set over the Dragon Kingdom. The sky turned brilliant shades of purple and orange and red. In the distance, he could see the barrier between this world and Earth, a shimmer in the air like heat waves. Somewhere on the other side, his old life was gone. His family thought he was dead. The man he'd been had ceased to exist. But Jake found he didn't regret it. Not really. He'd spent his whole human life feeling like he was waiting for something. Now he knew what he'd been waiting for. A chance to matter. A chance to protect something that deserved protection. A chance to be part of something greater than himself. A small sound made Jake turn. Prince Kale had come out onto the balcony, his sapphire scales gleaming in the sunset. The young dragon stood beside Jake and looked out at the city together. "Do you think the Shadow Horde will return soon?" Kale asked. "Probably," Jake said honestly. "Malachar won't stop until he's defeated or we are." "Are you afraid?" Jake smiled. "Terrified, but I'll be here anyway. That's what guardians do." "That is what family does," Kale corrected gently. Jake looked at the young dragon, at this impossible prince who had given him a new life and new purpose, and felt something warm settle in his chest. He'd lost one family when he died, but he'd found another one here among the dragons. Yeah, Jake agreed. That's what family does. Below them, the crystal city glowed with soft light as night fell. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the walls, enemies gathered and plotted. But here, in this moment, there was peace. There was home. Jake Morrison had died protecting a dragon child. He'd awakened among the Dragon Kingdom's strongest guardians, and he'd found exactly where he belonged. The war wasn't over. More battles would come. But Jake was ready. He had purpose now. He had people to protect. He had a family.